If you ever come across some shaky footage that you want to stabilize, the warp stabilizer is most often a really good weapon if you want to regain some control and stability of it. Choose warp stabilizer VFX, which will automatically start initializing the footage or the actual start to analyzing the process for the footage. You should already see quite a bit difference, but this can be taken even further and perhaps change the result, or you can try eliminate the camera movement completely with no motion. But let's go back again to smooth motion, which is something changeable in finer detail as well with a smooth adjuster. It's actually just going, or is changeable between 0 and 100% over here, but instead it can also be increased all the way up to 1000% if you go directly on the percentage number. Keep in mind here though that the default one at 50% is already quite high and a little bit dependent on the clip and what you actually want to accomplish with it. It might be better to go down and start around 10-20% and then work yourself up from there instead to create a little bit more natural and sometimes even better looking clips. With the default method Subspace Warp, After Effects adjusts the footage in all ways possible it thinks are necessary for stabilizing a clip. Anything from positioning, scaling, rotating and perspective, while distorting or deforming and twisting the footage. If this becomes a bit too overwhelming and too much, then try only position as method or position, scale and rotation. With that, having the preserve scale to check on and off, depending a bit if we want to prevent the stabilizer from scaling in and out or back and forwards in the footage. Then there's the method of perspective, which also introduces some distortion or deforming again, and using a 4-point corner pinning when stabilizing the footage, and compared to the Subspace Warp, which instead uses a multiple of different reference points in the footage for a bit more detailed control. However though, if you're ever coming across or getting some unwanted keystoning in the perspective, keystoning meaning a type of weird looking tilting distortion, or you're getting some unwanted warping with the Subspace Warp as a type of bending distortion in a weird way, then you can always go down to the bit more simpler methods instead. Every time a higher method can't find enough areas to track, it will drop down or lower to the method underneath. Heading over to the border section, there's an area called framing. Currently, this is set to the default as stabilize, crop and auto scale. And as there is no compensation for additional crop and scaling, the whole footage will move around showing the whole frame and edges. This is something that you might want to do or might want to consider doing if you want to do the cropping yourself separately to perhaps get an even better result. Then with stabilize, crop, we're also throwing in the ability to crop or trimming the outer edges. Back at default one, we see the auto scale added and also changed down here, while fine-tuning its maximum or throwing in some action-safe marking, pushing in the scaling with a given percentage. And the additional scaling can be ramped up all the way to 10,000%. But this one is without the actual extra resampling though, meaning it won't change the actual resolution or the pixel dimension, meaning it won't add or remove any of the pixels when scaling, just like what happens when you're scaling with the normal transform scaling. Then the fourth, framing, stabilize, synthesize edges, will create new pixels for the blank spaces when the edges are moving, and it's based on the frames before and after the current one. Diving into the advanced options, and start with the synthesize input range. Connected to this mode, we may adjust in seconds how far back or forward in time it shall collect pixels from other frames for the missing frames. The synthesis is tweakable for the edge feather, thus smoothing out the edges where the new pixels line up with the old ones. With synthesize edge cropping, cutting or trimming off bad edges are done manually for each side of the footage. I will just quickly change the method and framing back to default, and the detail analysis may be turned on. This might be a good option to try if your warp stabilization ever failed, or when it actually does, then it will increase the search area a little bit and involving a few more elements in the scene. But it also comes in the exchange of a little bit speed drop and a little bit more data. We got fast analysis, which is on as default, and you can tick this off to go back to the earlier, slower version if you prefer. But I'm not sure if unticking or unmarking this will actually give some benefits in form of quality, just pretty much a slower tool for working in, so I can't see that much use of actually doing it. Rolling shutter ripple, which have an automatic reduction and an enhanced reduction. A rolling shutter ripple is when a whole image is not captured in an instant, instead just a quick gradual part. But if there's movement simultaneously or at the same time, distortions or ripples like wavy jello-like movements might occur. So whenever you have an image or a footage that contains these large ripples, then you can try use the enhanced reduction to better remove these ones. Moving on, we got crop less or smooth more, and this will balance the percentage of how much weight each of them should be given, giving it a little bit less cropping but with more smoothness, and vice versa on the other way around. The objective in Warp Stabilizer is used to determine the aim or the focus of the effect, where the default and normal use is the Stabilize. This is also changeable to Reversible and Reverse Stabilization, something that is used together in a footage to add effects between them, and it's also a part of the whole stabilization process. So this meaning that first you change to reversible stabilization to make the footage steady, then duplicate the effect, add a reverse stabilization to introduce the shaking back, which basically just takes out or balance out each other. But now instead it's being possible to throw in any type of effect between them too. So let's do just that, and we will add an CC light sweep to this one, and to be able to see it clear, to see the difference clear, pump up the intensity a little bit. As seen, the effect now look like it's a part of the footage instead of moving around with the actual camera. Then let's undo and delete that one. Moving on to apply motion to target. Something that we may add to any type of footage or image layer. So for example, choosing the text layer, navigating, and now the same motion is applied to that layer. Maybe wanting it in the actual footage, and then we will have to change the objective to apply motion to target over original instead. We might adjust or animate the position of the text layer or your actual object if you're not happy with the placement, as normally you would do under the transform properties for that specific layer. There's an option beside saying source which is showing the current source layer. If we're hiding this footage and showing our text layer, perhaps adding a simple mask to this, and throwing on some glow effect as well. Why not? Change into mask now instead, and then that will be included in the footage. Last option throws in the effects as well. Next option here, this is a really great one when you can take a little bit more control over the footage of what you actually want to stabilize and what you don't want to stabilize within the footage. Perhaps with some moving objects in it, or when it's not just behaving in the way that you want it to behave. Here the show track points come in very handy, whereas we will be seeing all the points After Effects are currently tracking in the footage. And if for some reason we think they're too small to see, we can just drag up the track point size a little bit here to make them a bit bigger. But anyway, just as with the track and stabilize, marking our track points by pressing, holding and dragging over those points we want to delete for each object or talent or whatever we got. Having the auto delete points across time should make this process a little bit easier, but you will still getting these new points on almost every frame to be deleted. Sometimes it's unfortunately what it takes to get that really great footage, so just move along and keep that scrubbing going, I guess. It might be a little bit of a time-consuming process though, as you actually need to scrub through the whole footage manually, but it can really do some wonders for your stabilization, and especially if it's not working correctly, and perhaps even as a replace or at least as a complement to masking out or doing the rotor brush beforehand. So might be another way to try to be a little bit more effective and get some better quality of it.